What's up guys, so today we're going to be diving into the world of gates for drums. Let's go. So hey, welcome back to the channel, Chris here. So like I said, we're diving into the world of gates. Now, noise gates have been around for ages. We've seen many a plugin of gates. I've gone through quite a few myself. But today we're diving into one specialized for drums in particular. This one is by Black Salt Audio and it's called Silencer. Now I've seen a couple videos pop up on my social media of people reacting to how insane this sounds. My friend Jordan also put me onto this, so thank you for that, Jordan. And in case you're wondering, yes, this Jordan. Honestly, the shitter it sounds, the better it comes across. Well, thank you for that, Jordan. But with that out the way, let's check it out. I've got some drums for a song that I'm currently working on. I'll link it in the description when it's out, because it's not out, but it will soon be out, and when it is, it will be updated. But checking it out, this is what the drums sound like. Sounding pretty decent. Shout out to Madison Claridge for engineering this because they sound really good. I'm not really doing much to the drums. These are all the drums we've got here. As you can see, I'm just processing the bus. So without the main processing, it sounds like this. Not too different. It's definitely a little bit louder, but a little bit heftier on the bottom and the top end. Taking a look at this plugin, you can see I've got a couple instances on the kick, snare, and the toms. And I'm going to start with it off, and then we're going to turn it on and see what it sounds like. So you can hear a lot of that main cymbal bleed is now out of the drum sound, even a little bit of the toms ringing out. Now, this is basically what a gate does. I'm going to dive into the plugin and we can take a look at this a bit further and see how it's utilized specifically for drums. In this case, actually, I'll start on the kick. That'll probably be an ideal place to start. So you can see here, this is the plugin. Actually, you know what? Let me get this on a stand. So as you can see here on the screen, this is the plugin, Silencer. There isn't too much. I mean, a gate plugin shouldn't really have too much, but this strips it back a little bit further and makes it really easy and convenient to use. As you can see here, this is our threshold control. So when I'll play the kick and solo. So when you see the actual feedback coming in here from the kick, this is where we'll set our threshold. D-bleed is basically almost like a high frequency control. So if you have a little bit of cymbal coming in to your sound, the D-bleed basically works as a high cut, just removing any of that brightness that comes in. Obviously, this can work for or against you. You need to tweak it just to make sure you're not going too over the top, because if you remove too much high end, then you might be sacrificing a little bit of the clarity that you're receiving from that certain signal path. So in this case, I've gone through all of the iterations of this plugin on the snare and the toms. I've started with a preset and then I've tweaked it slightly just to favor the sound and make it sound just a little bit cleaner, depending on where the preset left me in the first place. So with this, the D-bleed, I've probably pulled it back. I might have extended the length a bit. But if I turn this off, can hear the snare, a little bit of the cymbal bleed coming through. It's not massive, but it's there. And then without it, it's mainly just kick. Since we're not reducing it 100% of the way, you can still hear it slightly come through, but in the context of a mix, you're not going to hear it at all. And it's more just going to help in the processing of the actual kick drum or the snare, however you're using this, to just give you a bit more control. You know, if you're EQing and you're compressing, you're not going to get all of those external sounds bleeding into your, original source. Now, if I move over to the snare drum, I'm doing something a little interesting here because we've got the snare top and the snare bottom. Again, I've picked a preset. We started with snare top standard, pulled the D-bleed back ever so slightly. The length is a bit on the longer side. I've selected this ghost button right here. And what that does is it takes your threshold and extends it slightly. So if you are getting some ghost notes, some more sensitive information that you want to get, This can be automated, so you can just turn it on if you have a section where you've got ghost notes going on. I've just clicked this on and I've left it on because I quite like the range that it's given me with the main snare and the slight ghost notes that happen. But if we move over to the snare bottom, what I noticed was that the input coming into the snare bottom was really quiet, and I originally had the threshold set really low so I could try get all of those details, but I noticed that I wasn't getting the ghost note information. It was too sensitive, too quiet. So what I ended up doing was I just sidechained the snare bottom with the snare top track in here. That allowed me to basically use the same information I was using on the snare top track, but just have it on the snare bottom. I've pulled back the D-bleed quite a bit because the snare bottom rattle is quite a bit of high-end information. So I've used this D-bleed just to pull back on that high end. Actually, if I play it, you'll get an idea of what it's doing. So you can hear it makes it quite dark, but if I pull this back, opens up that top end, makes it a little bit clearer. And then I'm using the reduction a bit more to really have a tight sound on that snare bottom, as well as using the ghosts to just make sure I've got all of those ghost note information coming through and it's sounding really clean. Now, when I play the drums without the plugin and with the toms muted, you'll notice that a lot of that bleed is mainly coming from the toms. So I'm going to play them without the gates, and then I'm going to mute the toms, and you'll hear how a lot of that bleed is going to disappear. So for me, that's usually something I find myself battling with, is the tom bleed coming through, because toms only get struck in a song, I mean, depending on the genre, but in this case, they only get hit a handful of times. There's a couple of fills going into different sections, and somewhere towards the end, there's a bit of a drum fill going on. But for most of the time, I don't really need that information kind of muddying up the drum source. Now, with that said, it already sounds pretty good without the gates on the kick and snare, but let's try it with the toms muted and with the gates on the kick and snare. I'll start with it off and then turn it on, and you'll hear just how it will tighten up that sound and leave the cymbal information to just come from the overheads and the room tracks we've got going on. So subtly cleaning it up, I'm just going to play them in solo so you can really hear how it's removing that cymbal bleed. Again, we'll start with it off and then we'll turn it on. Overall, doing a really killer job at removing that cymbal bleed. So there's a section in the song where it goes between the chorus and the verse where I'd like to check out because we've got a little tom fill going on, and I'd love to show just how this works on the toms, because that's where I find you get the most action from bleed happening. So let's play it right here. So that's the section. Now let's get the silencer on. I'm going to turn it on everything. Let's hear how it sounds. Overall, it sounds a lot cleaner. You're not losing as much high end as I would anticipate you'd lose. Sometimes when you're using a gate, I find you either end up losing a bit of high end and you have to bring it back one way or another, or you get this effect where tom or a snare or a certain shell is struck, you get the sound of the cymbal just coming in for a split second and sounds like ksh, 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 ksh. Not really ideal. I mean, there's a section in the song where I can maybe make that happen. Let's see. I mean, that's a bit of a subtle example. I had it in solo. In context of a mix, you're not as likely to hear it. But if it's over exaggerated too much, it can become really apparent and become a bit, annoying to deal with. So this is doing a really good job on just making sure that doesn't happen. overall, really digging it. So far, I have to say this plugin is really impressing me. I think it sounds really good and not super complicated. I've dealt with some gates back in the day. The Logic gate was an absolute pain to deal with. And again, this is quite specified for drums, but I'm sure you can use it on other instruments. That's usually the case with a lot of plugins these days, even if they're made for one thing, using them, you know, there's no rules, you can use it on whatever. I think that's about all I can talk about for this. You've got your presets up here, there's a couple factory presets. You have a little output master volume if you want to change that, but otherwise, that's the plugin. Black Salt, smashed it. I think it sounds really good. It's definitely going to be saving me some time. Once again, thank you, Jordan, for putting me onto this plugin. You've saved me a couple clicks for sure with this and saved me some precious time. And that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to let us know what you thought in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you think. Do you guys use gates? Do you prefer just leaving all the drum sounds raw and open? I know people that prefer that sound and prefer working with having a more kind of open drum sound and not as choked up. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate the support, and thank you to anyone who's already done so. Once again, I've been Chris Vella, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.